They're like, hi. Amazing. So I think we're ready to go. Hello, my name's Rianne Thompson. I am your host this evening, and I am part of BBC Music Introducing on Radio Tees. And tonight we're going to be talking all about an artist's guide to building your own PR and approaching the media. I have an amazing panel with me who are going to give you lots and lots of advice. But just before we get started, I thought I'd give you a little introduction. So thanks so much for joining us. You are listening and with us for the Yorkshire Music Forum Convention, which is produced by the Yorkshire Music Forum Consortium of Come Play With Me, DMF Digital, Higher Rhythm, Arnold Brown Limited, and Music Leeds, and in collaboration with Launchpad. Now, Yorkshire Music Forum is a PRS Foundation talent development partner, and this event is supported by the BPI as well as Youth Music, with public funding from the National Lottery through Arts Council England, Leeds 2023, Arts at Leeds, and Leeds City Council through Launchpad. And remember, you can find out about other talks happening as part of this year's convention through the links in the comments. There's some amazing stuff going on this week, so make sure you check in and check out all of the other panels and talks. So I've introduced myself, but I think what we'll do is we're going to go round the panel and get everybody to just say their name and just, say what they do. So we'll start with Cat Park. Would you like to go first?
Hi, guys. So my name's Kat. I own and run TenLetter PR and TenLetter Radio. We've been going now for 8 years. And I have been promoting largely in the UK kind of British black music scene. I'm actually also like a panelist for the PRS Funding Foundation as well. That is me, and that's what I do.
Amazing. Jasleen, do you want to go next?
Yep. So my name's Jasleen, and I'm a publicist working for DawBell PR based in London, and I'm also a freelance music journalist as well.
Jenessa?
Hello, so I'm Jenessa, I'm based in Leeds, and I'm also a freelance music journalist. I write mostly for NME, The Guardian, DIY, Galdem, and I've also got a column on the45.com, which is a really cool new platform that is dedicated to artists and writers who are either female or non-binary. So that's me.
Amazing. And Chiedu?
It's Chiedu Oraka speaking, Chiedu Oraka in the building and all that jazz. I am an artist, a poet, a mentor from the great city of Kingston upon Hull.
Amazing. Thank you all for joining me today. So we're here to talk about building your PR. It's quite a lot to get through, so we'll just kind of get straight stuck into it. How important do you think it is to have a plan and prep early? Jasleen?
Just I was thinking, I have this thing where I can't hide my feelings. We're very across the face. Well, I think planning is it's the life force of PR. It's with anything in the music industry. I think if you go into something without a plan, that's not a good idea. Planning is where everything comes from. So I think it's definitely important. It's vital.
Jenessa?
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. I think speaking from a press perspective, if you're in a position of wanting to sell what you're doing to other people, to have them invest in it, whether that be financially or just in terms of verbal support, you need to know who you are so that you can effectively communicate that to other people. So I would say that even if the idea of a plan scares you, you at least need to have a pretty solid understanding of what you're about and why I guess people should care in the first place so that you can then build from that when you're speaking to other people.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think the why, before you start any sort of plan, the why is like the most important thing. Like I watched like a TED talk. Is it Simon Sinek? I can't remember his name, and he's I think it's that Simon's something, and he's obsessed with why. And obviously, if you don't know your why, like no one else is going to be really interested in you. I don't think. Like you've got to know why you're doing it, and you've got to make sure people can buy into it before you start anything. I believe. I think I think your plan starts with the why.
And also, I think it shows like that you're serious about what you're doing as well. If you go into something kind of like haphazardly without a plan, then it shows that you're not as serious as someone who's, you know, put the time and the effort into doing something. And I think it really shows as well if you don't have a plan.
And quite often the music industry, well, all the time, you know, we do forward planning, and whether you're in radio, you're in press, like live events, we're always planning 3, 4, 5 months ahead. So I guess it's like working to that timetable as well, isn't it? And making sure that your release is ready for when you need it to be, and having everything in place. What about artist bios then? I feel like from a radio perspective, I get lots of different versions of bios, but what do you think is super important to include? Kat?
I think there's a big difference between a press release and a bio. And I think that obviously like at an early stage of kind of deciding if you're going to go down the whole kind of PR and like promotional route and everything, like obviously this comes into like the planning question as well. And I think that, you know, having an artist bio it's factual. Do you know what I mean? Like a press release, like is a lot better at kind of like selling yourself and kind of like picking out like key moments and key things. Whereas like an artist bio is more or less a timeline of like things that you've done, like key points. It doesn't need to be too fluffy around the edges. It's literally about when we send out an artist bio, that is to arm people that we're sending that to with the facts about the person and about the like the group, the artist, you know, whoever it may be. So like that's kind of like the fact-based like information that you need to have, and obviously it's something that you add to each time. So in terms of releases or key things happening, like a bio would be something that obviously it's a work in progress constantly.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. The fact that you need to commit to constantly updating it. I think lots of people misinterpret bios as kind of being like the story up to the point of deciding to do music. And like, that's really important, but you do need to keep updating because it's always very obvious when you receive material from a band that's not kind of been regularly kept on top of. So I think that's a really good point. And I think I would add to it that a really good tip for bios, if you're struggling with it, because I know that some people find it really awkward kind of like writing about themselves or their own achievements, is to just get a mate to interview. So like I write quite a lot of artist bios as a journalist, and that's fine because obviously I kind of know what I'm doing, that's cool. But I think there is a lot you can get to the heart of by just getting someone who knows you really well to ask you those very basic questions about who you are and why you're doing what you do. And if you just kind of naturally have that conversation, often your natural tone of voice comes through a lot easier than trying to like force it on a page by yourself. So as something that can be done obviously super cheaply, like just get a mate on Zoom and get them to ask you like all of those really basic like dating questions almost and work through it that way. I think I've seen has worked really well for people with small budgets.
Amazing. Does anybody else have anything to add?
Yeah, going off Jenessa's point, I think bios are super important because it adds that personal element to getting to know an artist that a press release doesn't. Like Kat said, press releases is all about kind of selling an artist, for lack of a better word. Whereas, the artist bio is where all the important information is, because it's all well and good like sending out a press release, but to really get to know an artist and to make them stand out from everyone else that's, you know, bombarding journalists, PRs, agents, whoever it is, bios is the way that you can differentiate yourself from everyone else, because it's the personal element.
I think as well, I think as well, it's a biography is a great thing, even at that kind of first step. So even when you're approaching like a publicist, or, you know, like for me, I like to know a bit about the artist, like kind of figure out where they are in terms of profile, what they've done before, where they're coming from. So even at that kind of early stage, it's great. Like, it doesn't have to be, you know, completely polished and perfect, because obviously that's what we'd also help to do. And obviously, like, a press release comes afterwards anyway. But I think, like, even that first point of call, when you start reaching out to people, just to have something even basic is like a great tool.
Yeah, definitely. So let's talk about press releases. You mentioned it there, the differences between a bio and a press release. So if you were going to give like a step-by-step guide of how to go about building your press release, where would an artist start? Anyone want to jump in?
I feel like a press release is like a mini review of whatever it is that it's about. So whether that's like a tour or, oh my God, rip live music, just got triggered there, or an album or a single. It's just like just describing it in a way that, you know, makes people want to listen to it, and then also kind of incorporating some elements of a bio. What I like to do is at the end of press releases put a bit of information about the artist in case someone isn't familiar about them. That's what I like to always do in press releases. And also something I noticed that a lot of people don't do, like as a journalist, when people send me music, is they don't put links to their music in in their like press releases or emails that they're sending over. That's something that's super important, and links to socials as well. I always make sure that I include those in press releases. It's like PR 101 basically.
Wow, a link is so important. Speaking of
so important. I'm like nodding furiously over here.
Yeah, definitely. Do you think what's the best way to do it then? Do you think like a link to Dropbox, link to SoundCloud? Do you think there's any preference, or does it just need to be easy, one click, so you can hear the music straight away?
I think something that's easy to act. Oh no, you can go.
I was just going to say that I think, speaking as someone, you know, not to toot my own horn, but someone who gets a lot of emails a day in the very similar format, I think anything that is just straightforward, clickable, that doesn't require you to download anything and doesn't require you to like take up space in your inbox is just the absolute way to go. So like SoundCloud is pretty much the easiest way, I think. I think that's better than Spotify even sometimes in terms of just straightforward clicking. I think as well, just to go off Jasleen's point about press releases, it's really important that when you're at the point of sending out a press release, you've actually got something to not sell, but something to promote in a timely fashion. So I think lots of new bands feel like, you know, they need to send a press release out about the fact that they exist almost, when really the press release should wait until you've actually got a song to share or a particular album to share, or something that is a bit more tangible than just kind of saying, we exist, look at me, because that's almost what the bio should be doing. So I think if you're kind of asking yourself what a press release should look like, the very first question you should ask yourself is, what is it that you're actually trying to get the attention to? And are you asking for that in a time span that's realistic? So if you've got an album to promote or even a single to promote, you don't want to be contacting press kind of like the day before it's out and expecting, like, you know, everyone to have time to turn that around for you. You do need to build in sort of reasonable time spans.
Yeah, definitely. I always found SoundCloud as well is the best way to listen to a track. Because the thing is like when you click and if it downloads, like you said, if you get loads, you just end up with tons and tons and tons of on your laptop or whatever. So I think
you can do good things with SoundCloud as well in terms of like making links private and stuff if you don't want it to just be, you know, floating around in the ether.
And SoundCloud's so much easier with like stuff like EPs and albums, whereas Dropbox doesn't have that kind of seamless feature. So SoundCloud is definitely, I'd agree, it's the one I prefer to use.
Yeah, definitely. Chiedu Oraka, do you have anything else to add? Any extra tips, maybe from an artist point of view?
I would say as well, like what's great these days, especially in terms of like if you are at that point of you've got a press release, you've got something there that you really want to talk about. Obviously now, like you get all the smart links, and you know, like different people kind of listen to different things. So you have like, you know, like some people might like you know have Spotify as they go to, other people have like obviously Apple, and so I think it's great now, obviously, like smart links, you know, and they kind of, you can go to straight to YouTube, they can go to like SoundCloud or Spotify or Apple or wherever they need to be, and it's all just in one place. So it's really easy, really clickable, and I think that can help too.
Definitely. Chiedu, anything else to add?
Yeah, just really to echo what everyone says. I think a press release, I just try and make it as when I'm doing them or when I get someone to do it for me, I think we just try and make it as most personal as possible. Just try and be as real as possible, and just try, like you say, like Jasleen said, like you need to be selling yourself. It's the opportunity for you to sell yourself, and like a lot of these people that you send in this stuff out, they get loads of stuff like this. So you need to make sure, you're standing out. Make sure the artwork's in the press release. Make sure you've got a good artwork as well. And just echo what everyone else says. I think artwork's really important though as well.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. Actually, making sure that you've got a clear, like, either a clear link to visuals in the email, or maybe that's where like sending a YouTube link can come in, so that someone can kind of see like the whole package right away, and kind of helps with that clicking, I think.
Yeah, and Chiedu, when you first started out, how have your press releases changed? So, you know, like once you've done like a few things, you can kind of add it on, and then, you know, you're being played on this station or this. How did you?
Yeah, they were just real basic at first, like, because I had nothing to promote. Like a guy called Stu Baxter really helped me with that from the Warren in Hull. I'm sure some of you might know him. Like he was writing my first couple of press releases, and like there wasn't really anything to really shout home about. I didn't really have the Spotify's then or anything like that. I didn't have a profile, but as I've obviously done more in the game, they've just built and built and built. And like I said, it's just, I think it's making it concise as well, because no one wants to read an autobiography. Do you know what I mean? Like, no one's there to read that. Like, they want it just nice, concise, your achievements. Like I say, you're selling yourself, but you've got to be thorough, and you've got to be like really strong with your approach. So just things. And like, I can't believe like some of you ladies have received things with no links. Like, I thought that was just a standard thing. Like, how are people meant to find you if you've not even got your social medias on there or stuff like that? Like, to be honest with you, that's baffled me actually.
It's sad.
It does happen a lot. I think the other thing as well with links is, and this is a super simple thing, but some people like will put the URL in the email but just haven't pressed enter, so it's not a live link. And even just something like as simple as having to copy and paste it and put it in, you know, in your browser for yourself. Like, it sounds silly, but sometimes that is the difference between like having the time and not.
Definitely. Okay, so talking about press releases, you've got it all ready, you've got your bio ready. If you're just starting out as an artist, who should you be sending these to? Like, what, you know, who's the best person to get in contact with? What are the best radio stations to get in contact with? Who should be on your list if you're a new emerging artist?
I think you have got to do your research.
That's
And
what I was going to say.
That's what a lot of artists, especially where I'm from, like where there's a lot of limited access, like, and there's not much industry advice or anything like that. Like, a lot of artists I know just simply don't do the research. They don't know what type of DJs are playing their stuff. They don't know what type of PR. Like, you could be like, I've known artists in my city who've like contacted PR companies that are mainly deal with like indie bands, but they're like a hip hop artist. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, you need to do your research. It starts with research, and I think you've got to be ready to actually hit the PR companies, because you might be just a new artist. Like, you can't be just hitting PR and not really having any experience, not really know why you're even doing this in the first place. So yeah, that's where I would begin for a new artist anyway.
Yeah, and if you're a band like pitching to like blogs or whatever without a PR, yeah, research is just so important. Like, that's from like when I was freelance before I started working at DawBell, I would spend like hours just researching who the editors were at certain websites, who the rock writers were at these blogs, who the indie writers were, who the electronic writers were. Like, you need to put the effort in. And even now, working like for an agency, I still feel like I'm a private investigator. Like, I'm still talking the emails on Twitter, on LinkedIn. Like, even like if there's a writer that you really, really like, but you can't find their email, just like drop them a nice message on Instagram or LinkedIn. Say that you really like their work, and if you can have their freelance email, like, you're not going to get things if you don't ask for them. And no one's going to do the work for you. Like, you have to put the work in to get the results. Like, I've had loads of like a lot of my friends who are in like upcoming bands and stuff like that. They'll ask me like, "Oh, who should I be emailing?" And it's all good me kind of giving them the contacts, but they need to establish those relationships themselves. Like, and it really shows when you put the effort in. That you want it, and that someone should be listening to you rather than
lazy approach. Like, do your research. There's so much content out there, so much. Like, I'm a bit of a geek with it. Like when you said you was a private investigator, like,
yeah,
I'm the same, man. Like, these people better watch their backs, because I might just sneak up behind them. Like, but you've got to be like that. You've got to be slightly stalkerish. You've got to be.
Yeah, I think the point about Twitter is a really, really good one. And I think, as well as knowing who to speak to, you kind of need to like wrap your head around how press works to some extent, because you almost need to like know what the capabilities are of the person you're contacting. So like, for instance, I freelance at NME, so that's fine. But sometimes the things that people ask of me would be decisions that happen way above like my involvement. So it's almost like, you need to figure out who the editors are, and then you need to almost see the writers more as like the community that you become part of by interacting on Twitter, for instance, or sort of like really starting to find ways to move in those circles, rather than just kind of thinking that it can be as simple as just emailing every journalist you've ever heard of and hoping for the best. Because I find that the thing that makes people's emails stand out from all of the emails you get is if there's a name in there that you've seen on Twitter, because they were talking about something, if not separate, like they were talking in a kind of conversational way. So it's not like sell all the time, if that makes sense. It's not, I wouldn't say it's essential, but I would say it helps to kind of like see people as people and individuals, rather than just kind of like another name amongst many, if you know that you've seen them in other places. So I would say definitely think about press as kind of like a more holistic experience, rather than just sending lots of emails and that getting the job done. And again, I think it's just about what Chiedu was saying about like being very clear in what you're actually asking for when you do send that email, and making sure that it is the right time for you, so that if you do get into a dialogue with someone, you're getting the best possible results out of that dialogue, because you've timed it right.
Yeah, definitely. I think like when you receive so many, if it's personal. and you know if someone's done their research, and you know if they haven't. I've definitely found that before. And so it's really great even to drop the name in, make sure it's spelled right is a great
Spell it right.
which you think wouldn't be like that big a thing, but then you know that somebody's like taken that time and listened to, say, like the show that I do, and like maybe they like an artist, and then I'm like really interested in it, and then I'm going to click on the link and be like, this, do you know what I mean?
I don't think you need to overdo it, because I think it can get to the point where like you're spending so much of your own time and it almost comes off like a little bit like too over familiar if you're like really swatting up. But I do think it's always nice, like nobody here is immune to like a small piece of flattery, are they? Like no one is. So it's always nice if someone sends me an email and is like, oh, you know, I saw you review this band or write this feature and we do a similar thing, so I thought you might be interested. That makes lots more sense to me than kind of someone just emailing me like, I don't know, a dance track or something when I've never written about dance. So I think that kind of evidence that they've done a bit of their research is always nice.
Kat, anything to add?
I think as well, you know, going back to what Jenessa was saying, you've got to kind of realise that you are coming into quite like a community, because it's great to rely on like having PR and, you know, like a plugger and them sending something out. But the chances are that if you're kind of new to it, you're not always going to have the finances to do it on every single release, in which case you're going to have to do that for yourself on a number of them. And before you even get to the point, like, you know, going back to what Chiedu was saying, before you even get to the point where you kind of need a publicist and you need PR and plug-in, you're probably doing yourself a favour by kind of learning what's going on out there, kind of like figuring out who's who, like understanding like what platforms are going to work for you, because then not only have you done some groundwork that you can then put into the press release, and then they can go forward and say, oh, and they've already done this and that and the other, and it's used as a springboard, but it also means that you've kind of got a gauge. So when you do have a publicist or anyone else on board, you can actually see, okay, like, yeah, I'm moving in the right direction, or yeah, this is a step up from what I could achieve in the first place. And, you know, like it makes everything a lot more quantifiable, I think.
I think you want to be able to trust, don't you, that like the PR is almost like doing, you know, working in your interest. If you already know a bit yourself, if you're sort of just blindly trusting that they'll do everything, that's probably a bit of a problem.
And what about local connections? How important do you think those are before you kind of start trying to hit, like, you know, getting in touch with maybe NME or another publication that is kind of the whole of the UK? How important do you think it is to connect with the local music scene? Shay?
Yeah, I think it's massive. Like I remember I supported Novelist in Hull, and I remember like the first thing he said to me was like, I respect you so much because you have got a huge local fan base. And he was saying you'll be so surprised about how many artists in London can't even sell out like the smallest venues because they've built no relationships in their own city. No one actually cares. They're not actually nice people. Like, and that really, because obviously me from Hull, I'm thinking, oh, all these London guys, like they can sell out their own city easy. And it was only till he told me that, he was like, mate, that is not the truth. Like, you've got to really love your home audience. Like, and it's something I've always done. Like, my home people are the first to get the music. Like, even now, like my local introducing show, the local shows, and I think it's so important because I think people underestimate you having a good home base, because you can practice new music there, like before you go to the bigger cities. Do you know what I mean? And I think it's so underestimated. Like, make sure you've got the ground covered from where you come from, I think.
Yeah, definitely. Anybody want to add?
Also, I think
that
sometimes... Okay.
I think I've got a delay and I'm talking over everyone. I also think with that, it depends on kind of what lane you're in. Like originally I'm from Carlisle and obviously like the music that I work is like, you know, typically like grime, hip hop, rap, and I mean there is like very, very little in terms of a scene here. However, in terms of kind of like a promotional scene and like, you know, like a specific route for you to go to, like obviously you've got places like your One Extras and your Capital Extras, and then you've got obviously, you know, like kind of community stations that really focus on, you know, like that music, and the same with blogs and everything. So again, I think it's like really identifying like, you know, what the strengths are in those certain, you know, like areas, or at least around you.
And I think because obviously my come up is, obviously I do black music, yeah, but my come up is from Hull, which is a predominantly white city, and it's predominantly a band city. And sometimes I used to get frustrated, like, oh, there's like no one like me, like people are not really coming to see me, and they're coming to see the band when I'm on gigs. But it definitely, I learned a lot through coming up with bands, to be honest with you. Like I learned the hustle and the merch, and like just like really homing in on doing live shows. You know what I mean? Because bands play all the time. They'll play in front of anyone, and I've really come up from that school basically. So yeah, man, I'm happy really with my local with the way things have happened locally, and like I say, I think it's very underestimated. Like never turn your back on your home crowd, and build relationships with the local blogs and your local magazines, because you never know who they might know just because they're local and they're from a little city. You never know who they might know. They might have relationships everywhere.
Yeah, actually, which leads me on to my next question, which is once you've kind of put the feelers out and you've made those initial connections, how do you kind of carry that on and build on those relationships and make them stronger?
I think largely consistency is important. I think, you know, kind of like ensuring, again, it goes back to like our first kind of conversation about having a plan. And I think, you know, ensuring that you've got to follow up, you know what's coming next. You can kind of really involve someone in your story, and you can involve people around your story. And I think that like what you then do is you end up kind of creating a foundation for yourself, and almost like a crowd of kind of people that you can consistently rely on, but you've got to be consistent with them in order to get that support, because obviously if you kind of fall off, then you know it's a bit of a two-way street, and as that builds, it builds all the way up. So yeah, I think consistency is very important for doing that.
Yeah, that's so true. Like if you just say, for example, you're an artist and you just have one single out and no one knows who you are, people are easily gonna, I don't know, maybe forget you if you don't have like another single that's coming out soon, or a body of work. And it might not even like have to be a single. It could be like a really cool cover that you did that you put on your Instagram live, or a session that you did, or like when live music was a thing, or like a gig that you played, or something like that. Just something that's like creative content that's gonna keep people interested in you and is gonna enable those conversations to continue. And that's how you can like continue to build those relationships, because if you're not doing anything, then there's no reason for you to be contacting people, really, because that's the way that you're doing it. You're doing it to show them what your artistry is, and if you don't have anything coming up, then how can you continue those relationships? Just, I think, like, I would look at what other artists are doing, like of a similar kind of standard, just to get ideas if you're stuck on things to do. Because I work with loads of new artists, and when we're kind of discussing plans and stuff like that, they'll often be like, oh, what can we do to keep people interested? And it's just like, well, think about your interests. You could be like writing poems and posting those on Instagram, or if you like cooking, you could be doing ridiculous like tutorials on Instagram. Like, just think about those like little fun things that are gonna grab people's attention and kind of want to get involved in your story. Like, it could be anything. I think people overthink it, but it's the most simple things that work.
It's personality, isn't it? Like, for better or worse, to be kind of successful, you do need to have some semblance of personality. And I think you're exactly right. If you're kind of stuck, you need to just take it all the way back to basics and think about what sort of creators you enjoy following on social media and why you enjoy what they post. Kind of take a bit of a leaf out of their book. And then it's again that thing about following people in the community, not just because you're trying to get something out of them, but because you're part of a community, and naturally you'll have conversations with people and they'll ask what you're up to, and then you can talk about it. It doesn't necessarily need to be as cut and dry as you send them an email when you've got a single out and that's the only time you ever talk. If you're constantly getting in touch with each other because you're kind of forming friendships even, that makes it so much more organic to be able to kind of say to people, well, look, I've got a single coming up, like, what can we work on? And it doesn't feel quite so stilted.
Yeah, definitely. And how important are release dates? Because we kind of live in a world now where we've got streaming and people always talk about an impact day and things like that. How important is it to have that set in your head and also on your press release?
That's funny. Because I'm going through dramas about that now, actually. It's so funny you've said that. Like, I've got something coming out, but then I wanted to release something in December, and then everyone's saying December's not a good time to release. And I've spoke to my distributor today and I'm like, I want to release something on like the first week in January. And he's saying, no, don't do that because people like Spotify won't be in the offices. Wait till the middle of the week, middle of January. So my head's just about to explode. So I'm waiting. You lot can answer this one. I'm going to take some notes, I think.
I think honestly, like, working in PR, it's made me realize just how flexible release dates are. Like with singles, I think it doesn't matter too much, but I'd say EPs and albums, it matters more, I think, just because it's more of like a long lead conversation that you're having with press. And in terms of single online, that flexibility is fine, but I think print is different because obviously print works to deadlines. But yeah, I mean, in PR, it changes all the time. I could be working on a release with the release date changes like 5 times before it's out. So it's something that, yeah, I think it's a double-edged sword, really.
I think you can get really like in your own head about this sort of stuff, but like at risk of being a bit cheesy, if what you're making is good, like it's going to be good a week later. You know what I mean? Like if, the sort of like the December, January argument, like I know why people would give you that advice, but also like if you've just got an absolutely like insane single, then it's still going to sound good in January, like even if it's taken people a little while to get to it. So I think there is a degree of listening to that sort of advice, but also just like having faith in what you're actually making and not kind of like an ideal date isn't going to suddenly get you loads of press if the actual product's like not up to it. So
I think in terms of like the radio side though, I do agree in terms of like the kind of PR side and the press side. On the radio side, I think it's a little bit different because obviously radio tends to shut down for almost like a month over kind of like December into January. So in terms of that, it then becomes like almost a psychological thing, because if you've started promoting something at the start of December, and then obviously you've only got that 2-week window at the start of December, and then obviously everything shuts down, and then people come back on the other side of the year, and all of a sudden all these people that have held on to the releases for the new year, they all come in. You've got like this like flood of new music. Then to look back at the start of December and be like, oh, but there's that track from 6 weeks ago. It suddenly feels very old, a lot quicker. And then you can get like a little bit overlooked. So yeah, I think, you know, like especially with some of like my clients at the moment, I'm a little bit, if you're not kind of doing it this week going forward, then we are kind of looking for like January onwards to kind of be pushing things. I think as well, you've got to be reactive to what's going on kind of in the world around you. And I think especially this year, a lot of people are looking forward to kind of drawing a line under 2020, in which case they're not ready to like, people are kind of like slowing down and just wrapping up for the year rather than focusing on, oh, what's next. I think what's next for a lot of people is now 2021.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And I think, like, obviously you've got to use your head a little bit. Like, if you've got a massive, you know, summer tune, you're not going to stick it out in December. But I think as well, like, you can be kind of clever with song releases in terms of, you know, sticking a song out again, like not this year, obviously, because live isn't happening. But like, if you know that you're going to be doing a festival season, for instance, you're probably going to want a single out in kind of like, you know, that sort of May, June time to help, you know, introduce you to festival season. So like, there is ways that you can kind of, you know, make it work for you. But I think getting very bogged down in like 1 week or the other, apart from obviously like the Christmas time, is probably a bit too much stress at the sort of new artist stage, I think, personally. But I totally agree on the radio side of things. I have much less experience in that space, and that makes total sense the way you've just explained it. So
yeah, I think you're right with radio, like from definitely like mid-December till mid-January, it's always like best of that year, and then the artists to look out for in 2021, and that seems to kind of take over for, I would say, at least 2 to 3 weeks. From an introducing side of things, like if things are uploaded and we love it, we play it, so release dates aren't as much of a thing. But I also think it's worth dropping your local introducing show an email, like, especially if you have if you've been played on the station before, or if you'd like an exclusive play. Because I know, like, I do that on my show, and sometimes that can also add like an extra pizzazz to the first radio play. Or if you want it to be a little bit more of like a feature on the show, can make a bigger thing out of it. But yeah, for radio, definitely, like when it comes to Christmas time, start of a new year, it's all about the best of and all that. It seems to be anyway. Right, okay, there's loads of questions coming in, so I think that we should just like get stuck into them. So, by the way, thank you for sending these in. They're amazing. The first question I have is, do you feel like there is a problem with ageism in the industry? Do you have any advice for older artists? Anybody want to answer that?
I think there probably is, but that being said, I think that there's lots of outlets and platforms that cater towards older artists that will not cover younger artists. So, for example, or they will prioritize older artists. So, for example, I think like the broadsheets tend to like older artists. Arts Desk is another outlet that tends to prefer older artists. I think, again, it's about doing your research, really, and if the music's good, then people will want to cover it. I think, yeah, it just depends, really, because you could be an older artist, but you could be, you know, releasing music that sounds really young, for example. So yeah, I guess it honestly depends, but if you can think of it, there will be someone who's covering it or someone who will like it. Like the media landscape is just endless. So yeah, it's just about finding just researching, really.
Anybody want to add to that?
I think it's just, again, kind of touching on what I was saying about knowing why you and having faith in that. Like, if your work's good, it's good, back it. And also be, I suppose, like, I don't really like this word, but like be quote unquote authentic in the ways you are promoting yourself. So like, for instance, you know, if you're somebody 60 plus, but TikTok really works for your style of music, like that's cool, roll. but like also don't feel like you have to do a particular platform or a particular like style of promotion because that's what seems to be popular. Like, trust what works for your particular approach and just get really good at doing whatever that is. I think also like this past year has shown that maybe some of the music genres that we would assume skew older are being really dominated by much younger acts, and similarly spaces that, you know, we would assume skew younger, there's some people who you would say are slightly older doing really well in those spaces. So again, I think the internet age and streaming has maybe made it slightly easier for ageism in terms of just like doing what you do and doing it really well, and kind of your age not necessarily being as visible or, you know, becoming as much of a problem as maybe it was. But I mean, I do agree that ageism is definitely a problem in the industry. I don't think that's something to brush aside, but I do think there are ways to kind of combat it for yourself.
Okay, next question. Do you think that London-based PR companies are likely to work with Yorkshire artists / bands? Anybody want to? Kat?
As someone who works for I was going to say, as someone who works for a London-based PR company, we work with people from all over the globe. Like, I don't even think I'm working any artists that are from London at the moment. So, like, I've worked with someone who's in Australia, someone who's in California, people who are based in Surrey, like all over really. I've worked with Yorkshire bands before as well. So like like, I don't know if this person asked this because of like the distance between Yorkshire and London, but everything, as COVID has shown, everything can be done virtually. So a lot of the times you don't even need to meet someone that you're working with in person. Like, you can get on a Zoom call, you can get on a telephone call and still vibe with that person and see if, you know, you can connect with them and that you want to work with them on your music. Like, it's definitely not it's not a barrier at all.
Anybody else want to come in? No? Perfect. Right, okay. Next question. As a new emerging artist, how do you know when you have enough experience to contact PR companies? And do you find it annoying to receive lots of messages? So as an artist, when's the best time, or when do you think it's a good time to maybe start looking at contacting PR companies?
It's a good question. I don't even probably. I don't know, you know. He's got me there. He's got me. I don't know, like, could you say, like, if you're starting to get a bit of, I don't know, like radio play from outside of your city, or a bit of love from out of town, maybe? I don't know. Kat, what do you reckon? I'm going to put it on you, you know.
Do you know what? For me personally, I think that it's a real individual thing. Like, I've worked with people that have never done anything, and they don't like want to do anything. Like, they literally just like they're not confident enough to do that, and they literally just want to hand it all over to someone, and that's fine. I would probably recommend that you, like, you know, like we said earlier, you go and like learn the ropes a little bit, like you build a little bit of a foundation, like whether that be locally, like, you know, with live, whether that be through like, you know, your local introducing and press and, you know, anything that's kind of happening around you. But I definitely think that, like, you know, like having that kind of just a bit of understanding about it is great, and that's like a great place to kind of start. Like, if you've got that buzz that everyone talks about, and like, you know, you're getting to that point where you feel like you can't probably just do it all by yourself anymore. I think that what is also a good thing, like, I I never get sick of receiving messages. I receive them at all different, kind of levels, like from different people kind of that have never experienced PR. They don't really know what it is. They've just heard that maybe they should get it. So, and quite often I find myself giving advice to people, and even saying, go and a little bit more about it. Get a little bit of experience, get some support under your belt, and then you'll be in a better position, because again, it costs money. So, and it obviously, especially when you're doing it by yourself, it can be quite expensive. So the more you can do yourself, probably the better it is for you in the long run, because you can kind of fall back and rely on it. And then when you've got key moments and key singles, or like an EP, or something like a strong piece of work that you feel really needs that extra push, perhaps at that point, you could consider PR and radio at that stage.
Yeah, going off Kat's point, I think it's really important to know that different PR companies do different things. Like, for example, you just have to look at someone's roster. Like, some PR companies will work with really established artists and, arena-sized artists, but then other PR companies will specialize in emerging talent, and that's the kind of people that you need to look out for, like that, because different PR companies cater for different things. Not one PR company is exactly the same. Like, everyone's different. So again, it's about doing research. I feel like that's the main thing here that keeps coming up.
I think as well, just to kind of add to that, what I would always suggest as well is speak to a few different people. Even it's great to get recommendations, but speak to a few different companies and really kind of gauge who is kind of invested in your music and your message, because I think that's really important if you're going to be building a team around you. You need people around you that really want to push what it is that you're doing.
Yeah. Okay, so a couple more questions, because we're running out of time. It's gone so fast. So, do you think it is equally important to get a PR and a radio plugger, or is one more important than the other? Anybody want to jump in?
I think both help each other out. Like, as a publicist who does online and print and doesn't do radio, if someone's had plays from Jack Saunders or Hugh Stevens or Lamac, that will really help. Even BBC Introducing, that will really help us with our work, because it shows interest in another area that's outside of PR. Because sometimes I feel like, as a publicist, if someone's been covered by, say, if you're emailing, I don't know, Clash, for example, you don't want to be going to Clash being oh, look, Enemy have done this huge piece on this artist, because it's kind of like polite rivalry, right? But if someone's been covered by like Jack Saunders or Hugh Stevens, you can say that, because radio is different to online press. So I think both of them help each other out. And I know, especially as well, working with radio pluggers on campaigns, online and print press really helps them as well when they're pitching to radio stations, when they're pitching to DSPs as well. That it goes hand in hand, really. So I think they're both as important as each other, but I'm biased, so
I would echo that, to be honest. The fact that you can, speaking obviously from the perspective of someone who does online and print press, I think you can definitely oversaturate a particular type of press outlet. So I think if you are finding ways to kind of do a bit of everything, that's the best thing you could possibly do. My radio experience is, like I said, tiny, so I'll pass on very quickly, but I would say as well that this question's probably quite genre based. Obviously radio play is great for everyone, but I would say some genres definitely rely on it more than others. So it might be that you are making a type of music that does lend itself better to written interviews where you can get deep into explaining it, or so on and so forth. If you're making pop music or hip hop or something that is very I guess maybe like movement based, like music that, you know, you're going to listen to in a social space. I'd say radio is absolutely essential, and other genres can benefit from radio, but maybe you might want to start with the written stuff. It's very personal, I think.
Has anybody got anything else to add? Chiedu, Kat?
I think it does also, I think everything always kind of boils down to what your expectation is of it, and what matters to you as an artist. Because I know, like, for us, like there's certain artists that just aren't bothered, like in our space, about doing the whole kind of like press side of things, because they're like, well, we want social media, and we want radio play, and we want like Spotify playlists and DSP support, and they kind of like switch off a little bit from like the press side. But then there's other people that say, I'm not really bothered about radio anymore, I'm bothered about these areas. So I think it's like, you know, like again, what Jenessa was saying, I think it really depends on kind of like what's important to the artist and to you.
Yeah, definitely. Right, less than 5 minutes. Somebody's got in touch and said, is there a best day to upload to BBC Introducing for it to be seen? I'll keep this really quick. Monday is a great day to upload because we all go out live on a Saturday, so that gives a full week for somebody to listen to it. Each team's different in each local area, and everybody works to kind of different like deadlines before the Saturday. So Monday's a great day if you'd like it to be played that week, or my show kind of runs on like a 4-week sort of basis where I kind of use like the past 4 weeks of the upload. So Monday's a great day. Okay, we've got less than 4 minutes left. So to finish off, if you could give one piece of advice to new artists, what would that be? Who wants to start?
So much pressure.
That. I think for me, one of my key pieces, this is a bit of a funny one, but I think one of my key pieces would be realistic. And I would say that in terms of, you know, kind of be really honest with yourself about where you are in terms of position and profile, and, you know, kind of be realistic in terms of when you're getting feedback, like, you know, don't take it personally, like, you know, kind of use that to like move forward, and use that to kind of like, you know, like apply like your next move. So yeah, I think that would be my key piece of advice.
Jasleen?
Have a good press shot. Like a press shot is not like, you do not need to invest loads of money in a press shot. Some of my favorite press shots have been like done on a disposable camera, or like, you know, the kind of fake camera lights effects that you can have on like iPhone or whatever, like just stuff that's aesthetically pleasing and true to kind of your sound, because that's how you're presenting yourself. Like, for example, if you were going into a job interview, you wouldn't go in looking awful, would you? You'd like go in and like put the effort in, because you're selling yourself essentially. So yeah, good press shot and artwork as well. Just make sure it looks nice, because that's what people are going to see.
Chiedu?
I'm just going to go back to what I think the first thing I said is just know your why. Like, why are you doing this? Like, are you doing it to feed your family? Are you doing it because you want to show off in front of your friends? Like, why? Home in on why, and just stand for something. You get me? Like, for me, like, I always say, like, my why really is just, and I've spoken to Kat about this, it's just I'm just the underdog in it, and I do it for the underdogs. Like, there's no one really like me, like where I come from. So I feel I've got something to offer this scene. So what have you got to offer? Why are you here? Do you know what I mean? Like, and that's why, like, the tagline, the Black Yorkshireman, like, you get me? I represent the Black experience, but from outside London, a story that's not really told. I grew up on a white council estate. Do you know what I mean? Like, and that is my why. That's why I do this. So yeah. Tell me why. Why do you do it?
Great advice.
Sorry to get a bit deep there. Sorry.
You said tell me why, and I instantly got Backstreet Boys in my head. So
Oh my god, I was going to say the same thing.
But no, I think Chiedu's absolutely nailed it. I think it's kind of like the RuPaul thing, isn't it? Like, you have to be really clear in why your stuff matters and who you are in order to convince people that they should share in that story. Like, it's fine to need to take some time over it, but like, when you do get to the point of press, you do need to be really knowledgeable about where you want things to go, ideally, and you do need to be, I guess, very clear in your own narrative, because I think it can become quite easy to sort of like be pulled in too many different directions where your message becomes very blurred. So I think if you really know who you are in the first place, it makes it so much easier for everyone else to invest in what you're doing.
Amazing. Well, thank you all so much for joining me today. It's been brilliant having you on the panel and just getting to talk to you about PR and kind of getting down to the nitty gritty and offering up all your advice. So thank you, everybody, for joining. Thanks for all your questions as well. They're amazing. And hopefully see you soon. Remember, there's loads of talks going on this week as well. So make sure you listen in every single day this week. Amazing. Thanks again to our amazing panelists as well. And hopefully see you all soon.